Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we got a chance to rewatch the Ohio State-Wisconsin game, and I don't want to spoil anything, but Ohio State did not run the ball any more the second time than they did the first time. Now, we can have the whole conversation about RPOs as an extension of the run game, and so, they ran plenty of those, but boy, oh boy, in terms of running backs rushing the ball, still not a ton.
No, not a ton. And if I had more time or had thought about it ahead of fact and then stuck to my guns, to go back and watch, okay, how many of these RPOs, what number of yards, pass yards did they lead to? That would give us a better idea of the running game. But as I told Kevin on Tuesday's Buckeye Weekly Podcast, yes, you attribute the RPO passing yards to the running game, but that doesn't mean it's okay to rush for 3 yards per carry and your actual rushes. So, you can be good at both things. You can get a lot of yards in the RPO and also average 5.5 yards per carry. It has happened in the past. There's no reason it can't happen here, although Tom will probably talk throughout the show about some of the reasons that it's not happening here. But first, I want to start off with positives because I'm trying to be more positive as we critique the best team in the nation and do so as perfect individuals ourselves. And I think that we need to put that out there. Like, we're not doing this as some yokels or whatever. Like, we're legit. The first thing I want to talk about is I'm just looking at the stat broadcast analytics. And Tom, I'm going to give you some numbers here. Julian Sayin, short passing of under 5 yards downfield, 14 of 15. Medium passes between 5 and 14 yards downfield, 15 of 17. Deep passing, 15 yards plus, 3 of 4. I don't know where what's the weak spot in this passing game for Julian Sayin because, yes, we watched him be incredible, and I just saw that and I wanted to mention it. But the thing that my first note here is that Julian Sayin missed a touchdown pass to Jeremiah Smith on the first drive. So I was being positive until, boom, I fooled you, and he missed this touchdown pass on what it eventually was just he dumped it off to Bo Jackson. He's waiting for Bo Jackson to turn around so that he can dump it off to him because Jeremiah Smith is breaking open. The safety over top is occupied by Brandon Ennis, who also breaks free. So if he just looks up, he would have seen Jeremiah, but instead he's like waiting for Bo Jackson to turn around so he can dump the ball off because he got pressured from the right pretty quickly, so he's already rushed, and there's some pressure coming from his left. However, if he would have looked up, it would have been a touchdown. But I say that, and then a few plays later, this is also the same drive where he's pressured, comes out of the pocket a little, buys some time, and steps into the touchdown throw to Carnell Tate downfield. So, like, he lives to fight another day, and then the last thing a defense wants is Julian Sayin fighting another day because he's eventually going to get you. I think my takeaway from all of this is there's a lot. There are some big plays still left in this offense, and just because you're not seeing them, you'll see one of them, but there may be 2 or 3 available on any given drive. But eventually he got it. I'm just saying, keep an eye out. There's more to come from this passing game.
Did you ever consider that maybe he's trying to teach you a lesson about delayed gratification? You ever think about that? He could have given you a touchdown earlier in the drive, but he didn't. He wanted to make you wait for it. Earn it, Tony. That's what champions do. I have a note here. He just looks so comfortable in the pocket. He does not always have all day to throw, and we'll get to the offensive line later, but he's not Michael Vick. He's not going to get out there. He's not Braxton Miller. He's not going to get out there and run 60 yards, but he can get out of the pocket. I'll say J.J. McCarthy's name because that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. He's a more accurate passer than J.J. McCarthy, and he's probably not quite as good a runner as J.J. McCarthy, but he can get out of the pocket and, move, open up passing lanes for himself. And then he's just so accurate when he throws the ball. And the thing that's maybe the most I think impressive to me is when he's in the pocket. There were a couple times where you had guys coming at him, and he would just kind of do the thing where he just kind of like gently sidesteps one way, and it's like a little step one way or a little graceful step, step, boom, pass, and it's just the guy goes zipping right by, and it's like, wow, that guy's terrible. He missed him completely, and it happens enough that it's like at some point it stops being a coincidence. He just has a very good sense for the pocket. Like we talk about his tools all the time, and the quick release is the first thing you hear, and the accuracy is the second thing you hear. Boy, did you hear Gary Danielson talking about his accuracy and ball placement with it's in the same spot every time. But arm strength you hear all the time. But man, just the pocket awareness, he doesn't get blindsided. He doesn't, he's knows where people are. He knows he can maneuver himself around to avoid the rush. And that's, that Tony is a good thing because he has had to avoid the rush a little bit in the pocket over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I'll let you talk about that in a second. I just want my last thing on Sayin is if you would just throw the ball higher to Jeremiah Smith, he'd be completing 85 to 90% of his passes instead of just 80%. And that was my other critique of his poor play on Saturday. It just throw the ball higher to Jeremiah Smith and let Jeremiah Smith go get it. We have not yet seen Jeremiah Smith come down with one of those one-handed catches. I promise you he can do it. Just give him an opportunity. When he's having to reach over his defender, that's an unnecessary throw. Just throw it higher and let him go get it.
Yeah, and there was, I think, the first time that he kind of underthrew Jeremiah. Jeremiah had the corner beaten, and if he had just sort of laid it out towards the back pylon, it was going to be a touchdown. And there were a couple others. There were a couple times when it was just kind of a tip your cap play to the defensive backs. Wisconsin's corners played pretty darn well in a difficult situation. But there was also, there was at least one or two where it was like, there was a touchdown there with a little bit of a different throw. So, all right, let's talk about the offensive line. The line itself, there were, I don't, you're hearing a lot of people talk about one player in particular. And there were plenty of plays where other guys were involved. There was one where Luke Montgomery got like cleanly beaten inside. Like, what? How did that happen? And there were several times when Phillip Daniels and Tigger Shabola combined had someone just go between them or just, the right side of the offensive line is, I think it's safe to say, a bigger concern right now than the left side. But there's only one guy they're rotating out right now. Austin Searveld is playing all the snaps of the ones at left tackle. And Luke Montgomery is playing all the snaps of the ones at left guard. And Carson Hinson's playing all the snaps with the ones at center. And Phillip Daniels is playing all the snaps with ones at right tackle. So this is one of these, the coaches can tell you what they want to tell you, but they're showing you what they think about the right guard position. And I think the right guard position is an ongoing concern. There have been, this is not, brand new territory for anyone to talk about here, but the second drive, there was, I think, a twist or a stunt or something that killed the second drive on a third down. The only first half punt came on a play where there was a third down run and a guy went right between Shabola and Daniels. It's not that there was a sack in the third quarter where the guy went between Shabola and Daniels. And it's not that Josh Padilla has been perfect. Josh Padilla had his guy tipped a pass. The guy who was blocking tipped a pass on third down to kill a drive right before the half, right? The drive that ended with the missed field goal. This is not a, if you just make this one change, everything's going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but based on what we saw live, and I didn't want to get too into it because I always am a little leery about evaluating offensive line stuff live from field level. But after watching it, it's pretty clear that there is one spot where they have a potential ability to upgrade and, potentially have the, it sounds like based on what Ryan Day said on Tuesday, that they are giving that a good hard look this week. And, it was not hard to figure out why.
Yeah, no. And I agree. It was not just Tegra in this game. Even, Carson Hinsman had some issues against the run. So I think the only guy that I didn't see struggle was Austin Searveld. And I bet, if I had watched all of his snaps, maybe I would have, but there's no play where it's just like, ooh, boy, how did this happen? And then you go back and look, it's like, oh, Austin did that. No, it's like, but you could do that for all of the other guys. Say, whoa, where was the breakdown? But with Tegra, they rotated him with Ethan Onianwa early in the season. They rotated in, Josh Padilla now. And at some point, you've got to recognize, or they already recognize, but it's like, what are you going to do about it? And, they've given, I guess, Padilla as many reps as they could to be able to evaluate him and see if they want to move forward with him over this off week and get him ready. And, Tegra's got all of his reps on video, and they'll go over that. And if it's something that keeps showing up, then why do you expect it to get better? Yes, he's growing. Everybody's improving, but if it's the same issue over and over again, then either you're coaching it or allowing it. And if he's not getting it fixed, you've got a bunch of offensive line coaches. They should be able to fix stuff. And if it's not getting fixed, then eventually you've got to just get somebody else in there. And it's not that he's bad every snap. It's just there are snaps where he's bad. And so you've got to do something about that and try to eliminate those bad snaps. And if that's Josh Padilla, you give it a go. I always like the idea of, a lower mobile guard in there at times. We grew up watching Mike Stafford play left guard for Ohio State as a pulling guard until he got hurt. And getting Maurice Claret at least 400 yards of his 1,237 as a true freshman in 2002, Mike Stafford, a walk-on guard that was mobile and nasty, and I think there's always a place for that in your offensive line. But also, Max Clare did not have a great blocking day either in some of these plays that were blown up. You saw James People struggle with a nickel blitz, a corner blitz, and he got to the quarterback. I think that was one of the lone stack came there, but also somebody else got blown up. So, yeah, not a perfect day. And when there was pressure, generally he was able to sneak up and get away from it. But twice he was tackled at the line of scrimmage as well. So very close to having 3 sacks or more, which is something that we haven't said in a while. So was this just an episode of them maybe not buying into it, even though Carson Hinsman told us last week this is a really, really good defensive line. So maybe we should just give Wisconsin credit.
Well, I think Wisconsin does deserve credit, not just for this, but for really the whole game. Like Wisconsin this was the David versus Goliath game where it does not end the way that it ends in the Bible. Like it was like David fought gamely, but went squish at the end. It was a Wisconsin that really fought hard. I mean, and they were outmatched to start the game. And then, boy, I really didn't have an appreciation for how many guys got hurt in that game and left. And, that everyone, the third quarterback, oh, he's hurt. Now you're going back to another guy. Your running back gets hurt. You've got, there were, I think, a couple of corners that got hurt. I mean, it was a mash unit for Wisconsin. And they really did fight hard. That was just the problem you have is you don't have good enough football players. Like that's just, sorry, that's just the way it is. And, you can look for more information on this, check the Big Ten standings, but it is a Wisconsin team. Luke Fickell talked in his post-game show about the fact that they really were playing hard and they really, Christian Allegro, the linebacker, breaks his arm in the first half and gets it wrapped up and they throw a splint on it and he goes out and plays and then he plays again in the second half. And there was one of Isaiah West's runs. I was like, ooh, that's a bad missed tackle there for Wisconsin. It's like, oh, well, he has a club on his hand and he broke his arm an hour and a half ago. So I'm going to consider that an excused missed tackle. PFF, please ignore this play. It was Wisconsin is not, we have seen teams like capital Q quit before. Wisconsin has absolutely every reason to capital Q quit on this season, and they absolutely have not done it, which, that's a credit not only to the players, but also to the coaching staff.
Yeah, for sure. So get this scrub out of here with his broken arm. Come on. Can't even tackle with a broken arm. What a loser. There was one other point that I wanted to throw in there, but you caught me off guard with the really ridiculing a man with a broken arm. I just But the injuries, Tom, makes me wonder. I wonder if that Camp Randall turf, I wonder if that's a split field, split film turf, and these players, we know, how terrible and dangerous that can be. Maybe
I'll
they've
look
got
it
an
up
old
right now.
school, maybe they've got an old school strength coach that doesn't know how to work their guys out properly before a game or a practice. So, boy, not to poke a finger in the chest of the football gods, but sometimes injuries happen. I do, again, I've said it before, I think Luke Fickell is cursed at Wisconsin. Somebody put a curse on him. Injuries just will not stop. Quarterbacks, anyone else. So I don't know, you need a shaman or whatever you can do, black salt, whatever you've got, just sage, smoke it around the stadium, do something because things are not good there.
Tony, according to fieldturf.com, on March 2nd, 2022, Classic HD boasts Field Turf's leading slit film fiber, and that was part of the 2022 renovation at Camp Randall Stadium. So there you go. So we can have a correlation causation conversation later, but that's fine. You mentioned Max Clair's blocking, and I had one where there was a third down play that got negated by a pre-snap penalty, but it was a run play that got just completely blown up because Clair just completely whiffed on a block. But then later on in the game, the Isaiah West run right after the Julian Sayin keeper, he had a really nice block. So, I look at Clair and I think every time they put him in a spot where he's like an inline tight end, and you're not like flexing him out, like have Will Kesmerick be the inline tight end because he can block, and put Max Clair out, split him out because receiving is his strength. You can do that. You can use him that way and not put him in a position where he has to do this. And I know the answer is, well, you have to be able to do everything to play tight end, to play 10 to Ohio State. We've heard it all over the years. You have to be able to block like a Big Ten offensive lineman. You have to be able to catch patches like a Big Ten wide receiver. Yeah. I get it. You can also put guys in a position to succeed and not put them in a position where it's like, well, he's an A- receiver and he's a C+ blocker. What should we have him do more of? Like, it just feels like there's an opportunity to put guys in a position to succeed.
Well, and this week more than any other, they really didn't do much 13 personnel out of short yardage situations. Mm-hmm. And it felt to me like, and I know PFF does they can break it down for you in terms of what was 11, what was 12, what was 13. So I didn't bother go down and count. Not that I don't have access to PFF anyway, but I'm not going to do the work if it's already out there, basically. But it feels like they did more 11 than 12 this week, or as much, which is not what the norm has been. So I think the more 11 and 12 that you do, and you force Max Clair to block and forcefully block, it's only going to help this program moving forward. So I think the more he's out there doing that, whether, one good snap, one bad snap, going to learn from all of them. He's going to, get better and get better. And by the end of the season, maybe he's a guy that you can rely on in big situations, and you don't necessarily need to bring in another tight end or a Jelani Thurman or, whatever. I know that they've got a bunch of tight ends that they want to play, but I think overall the offense hummed along pretty well doing what they did with 11 and 12 this week, rather than, starting a drive with a first down and bringing out 13 personnel. And it's like, I don't understand the reason for this. And there is no reason for this other than you think your tight ends are better than your receivers and your running backs.
Yeah, it felt like they took some steps towards maybe putting, addressing some of the ongoing issues, let's say, where they had, you had seen them not pulling the ball on RPOs. Mm-hmm. And then they did that and it worked. And you saw less 13 personnel in short yardage. And they were not perfect in short yardage, but they were okay, and they certainly moved the ball well. And this is not this is a terrible Wisconsin offense. Let's be real clear about that. But the Wisconsin defense is not terrible. The Wisconsin defense is fine. They're not amazing, but they're fine. They converted 5 of 11 third downs, but 2 of 2 fourth downs. So really, you got 7 out of 11 you ended up converting. So That's not, that's not bad. That's a reasonable conversion rate. And they were able to run the ball at times. And maybe that's a smooth transition into Isaiah West, who, I don't know that this is something that I necessarily noticed on the rewatch. A lot of times this is oh boy, this is something I really didn't pick up. Yeah, I noticed Isaiah West live. I saw that very clearly. But man, he has a burst. He was breaking tackles. Now, again, this is late in the game. Wisconsin is pretty beaten down. Wisconsin's pretty injured. I'd like to see it in the first quarter against, like a full set of someone's ones. But I find Isaiah West's ideas intriguing, and I wish to subscribe to his newsletter. Like, let's see what the Isaiah West, Bo Jackson, RB1, RB2 thing goes. Let's see those two guys rotate through some first quarter snaps and see how it goes, because it feels like you kind of, James Peoples has just sort of slid down the depth chart through the course of the season. First game of the year, the two guys who got carries were CJ Donaldson and James Peoples. Most recent game, the two guys who got carries were Bo Jackson and Isaiah West, and everyone is healthy. This is not, someone's not healthy. It is the coaching staff is telling you what they think of these guys. So, I think this is what I'm expecting to see. I'm intrigued to see more of it now moving forward.
And he did have a 15-yard carry in the second quarter. So it's not just mop-up duty, even though the bulk of his carries were in the fourth quarter. It's interesting to me that they're turning to him earlier and earlier, and just as they did with Bo Jackson. So I am interested to see after this week off who the first two guys to get the carries are in the game against Penn State, because again, it is still a big game time. I'm not sure if you know this. Big noon Saturday, big noon kickoff. That is the premier destination for any Big 10 or Big 12 team. It is the biggest game of the week, and they will be in Columbus for Ohio State versus Penn State. It is a big game against a very good defense, and it will be interesting to see who the first two guys to get carries are, because at that point, then it's like, well, maybe they've moved on, and maybe this is now the way it's going to be. However, it's still so early, and as Ryan Day said, they're still collecting data that they don't have enough data from any of these guys to know exactly how they'll be in December and January. So everybody still needs to continue to get opportunities, and that means 4 running backs trying to figure this out. And I guess at one point, if one guy stands out above the rest, like Bo Jackson did, then you ride him and let the other 3 kind of eat what they can. But then when he comes back down to earth, that others get the opportunity again. And if Isaiah West proves that, he's averaging 9 yards a carry now and he should get 15 carries, then the other 3 are going to have to figure out how they're going to get fed. And so it's like there's going to be an opportunity every single week for one guy to stand out, and whether that's running the ball, whether that's catching the ball, because Bo Jackson had 5 catches for nearly 60 yards. He had 100 yards, over 100 yards of total offense. So just because you only may get a handful of carries or no carries, you can still be that outlet guy for Julian Sayin. You can make plays, get back into the backfield action. And although I'm sure at times it's frustrating when you're the running back in there on the RPOs and you're not getting the ball, but that's life at Ohio State when you've got 4 running backs. And although Carlos Loughlin, we joked back in fall camp, why y'all keep saying I got 2 running backs? I got 6. Right now they're meeting in the middle of 4. So Turbo Rogers is still out, and Sam Dixon, just there's no opportunity for him right now as they're trying to figure out these 4. And it's going to be a week-to-week thing. And right now, I think the only person who has established himself on the top tier is Bo Jackson. And now there's going to be always a role for CJ Donaldson in short yardage stuff. But in terms of the 2 guys getting the most carries, it's Bo Jackson, and then the other 3 are going to fight it out. And right now, the pecking order may be for Penn State, West, Donaldson, Peoples, based on how practice goes.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to go between now and then. And I also wonder, the 2 freshmen, freshman running backs are great. They're very exciting. They've never done this before. They've never had to take this kind of a beating. We talk all the time about guys hitting the freshman wall. It feels like Bo Jackson may, maybe possibly one explanation for the yards per carry dropping and him not looking explosive like he did against Ohio in the running game is that you're hitting the freshman wall. And if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen at some point because it happens to basically everyone. That'll probably happen to Isaiah West too. It may happen a little later because he's a little behind schedule where he didn't go through the spring and he didn't go through summer and didn't play some of the early weeks. You know who's not going to hit the freshman wall? CJ Donaldson. I think CJ Donaldson has a role with this team, both as a short yardage back potentially, but also potentially as the guy who has kind of done this before. And we'll see what the freshmen look like coming out of the off week. I think this is, for Bo Jackson, this might not be a bad time to have an off week and sort of get your legs back under you maybe a little bit before you head into the home stretch of the season. But they've got games. They have 3 games between Penn State and Michigan that are all games where they're going to be favored by more than 20 points. And Penn State, they're going to be favored by probably close to 20 points. You're going to have opportunities for all of these guys to potentially get more carries and show what they can do and show that their legs are fresh or that they're ready to pick up. Corner blitz is better, whatever it is. Like all the stuff that they're looking for, you have the opportunity to show that you can do that. They're probably all going to get opportunities over that time. And then you sort of lock yourself in after that when you go into Michigan and into the college football playoffs, but the potential Big Ten championship and all that kind of stuff. But you mentioned Bo Jackson coming out of the backfield. Bo Jackson running the ball looks one way. Bo Jackson coming out of the backfield looks completely a different way. He just catches the ball 3 yards downfield and just boom is going upfield immediately. That's the only thing that makes me wonder if it might not be freshman Mole and it might just be, the offensive line is not blocking particularly well. That the legs look fresh enough when he's catching the ball out of the backfield. So, is that a vision thing where the holes aren't huge and he's not seeing the right cutback lanes and you get the ball out in space and like, boom, you can go? Or is it just, we're circling back to the offensive line conversation from earlier?
It's not too often this season where you're like, oh, you missed that cutback, because they're not getting to the line of scrimmage, or they're getting to the line of scrimmage and that's it. And very, very rarely do you see like, oh, there's a gigantic hole. And so I'd say the offensive line is definitely involved in this. And there are times where, there's just like too many defenders. And it's like, even with the offensive line blocking their guys, there's one extra defender somewhere. And I don't know if that's because the tight end didn't block them or what, but the offensive line is not creating opportunities as well as they need to, especially for some young running backs that are still learning. And then you throw James Peoples in there as well. There's just not not a lot of opportunities to make somebody miss in the second level, because they're not even getting to the second level hardly. So yes. It'll probably get better. We'll see. Tom, how about those defensive tackles? We say it every week. One of the plays that Caden McDonald made where he just he did a J.K. Dobbins jump cut to make a play in the backfield. Will Smith stood out again at times, just so quick and blows plays up. And you don't realize why something was blown up until you go back and watch, and it's like, oh, you see 53 like coming out. He's the last guy out of the pile. And Edric Houston had a couple of good plays in there as well, or notable. These tackles are continue to be they're not a pleasant surprise any longer because they've been playing well. Just they always stand out, but they're playing some. This is the worst offense they may play all season long. So take that with a grain of salt. But they continue to make plays, and they continue to be a bright spot of a defense that they were expected to be the weak spot of.
Right. That was a thing that we came out of spring ball saying, boy, here's a concern. And then we went through fall camp saying, boy, here's a concern. And we went into the season saying, boy, here's a concern. And the guy who we had kind of penciled in as, well, what you're getting with Edric Houston and Caden McDonald. We're kind of batting 500 on that. And Houston's missed some time with injuries and that kind of stuff. But man, they have Tywone Malone has exceeded expectations. Like if we're doing the, job evaluation and it's, needs improvement. And then Tony, there are actually 2 categories after that you may not have heard of during job evaluations, but meets expectations or exceeds expectations. It feels like you can go through and it's like Tywone Malone exceeds expectations. Caden Curry exceeds expectations. Arvell Reese exceeds expectations. I would say Jalen McClain exceeds expectations. Jermaine Matthews exceeds expectations. And everyone else, it's either exceeds expectations or meets expectations. Kenyatta Jackson has had exceeds expectations moments. Sonny Styles has certainly, I think the expectations for Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs are so high that it would be hard for them to exceed them. But Davison Igbinosun has been really solid all year. And it's like, all right, we just named everyone on the defense and they're all good or better. And yeah, this is absolutely not we're not talking about the defense on the show for the same reason that Ryan Day didn't get asked about the defense, because it was like, you're playing the poor man's Brian Ferentz offense. Like, yeah, you're going to look good. This wasn't a surprise. I literally picked a shutout, and I tell you all the time never to expect a shutout. Like, this was not a surprise. But it was really solid. And really, the only thing that I thought was really noteworthy was the twos really kind of bowed up at the end of the game and got a stop when that is nothing but pride on the line. That is, you're just there. You are trying to maintain an artificially important number that has, some significance, but really in terms of the actual, it didn't impact the outcome. It didn't impact the point spread. It meant nothing other than just, we would like to get a shutout. And the young guys really stepped up. There were moments where you kind of went, ugh. Even rewatching, it was like, did they score on this drive? Am I forgetting this? But they bowed up and made some plays when it needed to. And finally, Tony, I don't think it looks like it's that fun to get hit by Aaron Scott. That was my last takeaway on the defense.
He is a missile. And he's going to be fun to watch moving forward. My last point defensively is Peyton Pierce seemingly always in the right spot. And we're seeing a lot more three linebacker sets, although sometimes Arvell Reese then becomes a defensive end. And I'm sure Matt Patricia is just having a ton of fun doing all of these different things. And so are the players being put into all of these positions. So it continues to be fun to watch this Ohio State defense. And they're fun to watch when they can make watching a Wisconsin offense entertaining in their own rights.
Yeah, it was. Peyton Pierce exceeds expectations. Yes. I was going through the ones and left him out there, but yeah, he is for sure there. The only other thing that I had in my notes was Gary Danielson is talking about, well, Julian Sayin's looking great. You got to remember, it's a perfect day to throw the football. And I went back and I thought, well, okay, it could get a little sloppy the next month or so. I don't know. I haven't looked at the Penn State weather yet. And you're usually good for one rainy, sleety, crappy, 35-degree and windy day at some point in November. And that will be a game where I would guess Ohio State will kind of bog down a little bit on offense. But I'm gonna name a bunch of cities, Tony. Ready? Indianapolis, Pasadena, Glendale, Arizona, Atlanta, Miami. Do you know what those locations all have in common?
Would that be Ohio State's potential sites in the playoffs?
Yeah, and they're also in the South, in generally places that are not going to get terrible weather in December and January and/or indoors. So, and they could end up playing in the Cotton Bowl instead, and that's also indoors. And you're running out of bad weather games, and this is. I think the Ryan Day offense is maybe perfect for the modern college football path to the national championship, where it used to be you bogged down and you had one bad game in November. You lose to Michigan State in 34 degrees and rain, and you're out of the national championship race. Now, if Ohio State loses a game in November, guess what? They get to go play for the national championship and make the college, in the college football playoff, where you're not playing in Lambeau Field in the college football playoff quarterfinals. Ryan Day's offense is going to work just fine wherever they're going. And that was one of those things I hadn't really thought about. And then Danielson said that, and I kind of went, it is. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm sure Ryan Day would love to get credit for the forethought the foresight to, well, of course you can run this, even if you play in Columbus, Ohio. You can, these are, as long as they handle their business and they're one of the top four teams coming out of the championship weekend, they can lose a game Or they could lose the Big Ten championship game and still be a top 4 seed. You don't have to play a game in 21 degrees in Columbus, Ohio, in the college football playoff if you have the regular season and the dominant regular season that you're having right now.
Although, and if you do have to play a game at 21 degrees in Columbus, Ohio, you could also just have it moved to Tennessee or Indianapolis. That might be better for you. So, Tom, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you could, hit the thumbs up if you're watching. We'd appreciate that. And, of course, 5-star rating and reviews on all of your podcast platforms of choice. You can continue, of course, to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.